There's a truth most people hide from their entire lives. Life rarely destroys a person. A person destroys himself long before life ever gets the chance. Not because he is weak, not because fate hates him, but because he keeps repeating the same mistakes with the same expectations, as if one day the universe will magically reward the same behavior that has punished him for years. Marcus Aurelius once said that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and a man who refuses to observe his own patterns eventually becomes a prisoner of them. Stoic philosophy teaches that stupidity is not the absence of intelligence. Stupidity is the absence of awareness, the absence of reflection, the refusal to pause and question your own steps. A foolish person lives the same day on repeat, makes the same decisions, trusts the same people, falls for the same traps, breaks his own heart the same way, and convinces himself that someday his habits will lead him somewhere different. But nothing changes until he does. Today begins a journey into 7 behaviors that destroy people quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, behaviors that the wise escape, and the foolish repeat until life collapses around them. When you finally see your own patterns, you stop feeling helpless, and you begin becoming unbreakable. Arif sat on the edge of his wooden bed, staring at the dim streetlight bleeding through his window. He wasn't angry. He wasn't broken. He simply felt stuck, as if the world kept turning but he remained in the same place. He whispered to himself, "Why does this keep happening to me?" He didn't realize it yet, but this single question would open the door to the rest of his life. Because the moment a man begins questioning himself, transformation begins. His grandfather entered the room quietly. The old man's presence carried a calm that years of storms had carved into him. He looked at Arif's face and said softly, "Your mind is troubled." Arif nodded. "I try, but I keep ending up in the same mess." His grandfather sat beside him, eyes steady. "Then tonight you'll learn the first warning, the first sign of a man destroying his own life." Arif listened. "Stupid people keep doing one thing," the old man said. "They blame everything except themselves." Arif frowned slightly. His grandfather continued, "The foolish think life happens to them. The wise know life happens through them. When something goes wrong, stupid people look outward. They blame fate, situations, people, luck, circumstances, everything except their own choices. When you lost your job last year, you blamed your boss, the economy, the timing. But you never stopped to ask whether you were giving your best." The words cut deeper than Arif expected. He looked down, replaying moments where he had escaped responsibility by pointing outward. The old man spoke again, "Blame is a shield. It protects the ego but destroys the future." Arif felt something shifting inside him. Marcus Aurelius had taught that within us lies a fountain of good, but only if we are willing to dig. Foolish people never dig. They complain. They find excuses. They repeat old habits and act confused when the same results return. Arif took a slow breath. Something about that truth made his chest feel lighter, almost as if he was unmasking himself for the first time. "So what should I do?" he asked quietly. "From now on," his grandfather said, "when something goes wrong, do not ask who is at fault. Ask what is within your control. Ask what part of this is yours." Responsibility felt uncomfortable but strangely empowering. Arif realized that blame had been his hiding place, but responsibility would become his way out. His grandfather stood, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You cannot change your past, Arif, but you can change the choices that keep repeating your past." The room fell silent, but this silence felt honest, alive, awakening. Arif nodded slowly, accepting something he had been avoiding for years. Tonight, he had learned the first warning. A man who keeps blaming others never improves himself. But a man who looks within grows stronger after every fall. Arif took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel lost. He felt awake. He felt like change was finally possible. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet fire began to rise. Tomorrow, he would learn the second warning, and it would reveal an even deeper truth about the patterns that silently destroy a man's life. Arif woke up earlier than usual the next morning. Something felt different. The air outside was the same, the room was the same, but his mind wasn't. It was as if the conversation from last night kept echoing inside him, nudging him toward a kind of awareness he had never practiced before. For the first time, he didn't wake up blaming the world, his circumstances, or fate. He simply woke up, observing himself. And that small shift felt like the beginning of something powerful. He walked out into the courtyard, where the sunlight had started settling gently on the old stone floor. His grandfather was already there, seated with a cup of tea as if he knew Arif would come. Arif sat beside him quietly, waiting. The old man smiled slightly. "You're ready for the second warning," he said. "But remember, sometimes the truth hurts more than the lie you've been living." Arav nodded. His heart felt steady, open. "Today," his grandfather began, "you will learn the second thing foolish people keep doing again and again, without ever realizing how it destroys their life." Arav leaned in, listening. "Stupid people," the old man said slowly, "keep surrounding themselves with the wrong people, and they never cut them off." Arav felt a sting in his chest. He already knew what this might point toward. His grandfather continued, "A foolish person is loyal to the wrong circle. He chooses company out of comfort, not wisdom. He relies on friends who drain him, trusts people who use him, and stays connected to those who keep pulling him backward." Arav thought of his own life. His so-called friends who laughed whenever he talked about improving himself. The people who pushed him toward distractions whenever he tried to focus. The ones who only called him when they needed something. He felt a heaviness in his stomach as the truth became clearer. His grandfather said, "A man becomes the reflection of the people he spends time with. When you walk with fools, you learn their habits. When you walk with the undisciplined, you start dropping your own discipline. When you walk with those who don't respect themselves, you begin losing respect for yourself." The old man paused, letting Arav absorb the weight of it. Arav took a slow breath. "But I've known them for years," he said quietly. "They've been a part of my life for so long." His grandfather nodded. "That is exactly why foolish people stay stuck, because they confuse history with worth. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they deserve to stay in your future. A wise man chooses his circle based on character, not years." Arav looked down at his hands. He had always believed that cutting someone off meant betrayal. But now he realized staying with the wrong people was the real betrayal, the betrayal of his own potential. The old man continued, "Stoic philosophy teaches that you must protect your mind the way you protect your home. You don't allow every stranger to walk inside your house. Then why do you allow every kind of person to walk inside your mind?" Arav felt the truth sink deeper. His circle wasn't just influencing him, it was shaping him. When you surround yourself with the wrong people, his grandfather said, life becomes heavy. Your dreams become weak. Your spirit becomes tired. Because you are carrying people who were never meant to walk your path. Arav remained quiet for a long time. The sunlight warmed his skin, but something colder moved through his chest. A realization that he needed to change more than he had ever admitted. "What should I do?" Arav finally asked. His grandfather answered gently, "You must learn the art of distance. Not anger. Not revenge. Just distance. Reduce your presence around those who drain you. Increase it around those who grow you. You don't have to fight anyone. Just walk toward your future, and the wrong people will fall away on their own." It sounded simple, but Arav knew it wouldn't be easy. Yet he also knew something else. Staying the same would be even harder. He stood up slowly, feeling a strange mix of fear and courage. Fear of letting go, courage of becoming someone new. His grandfather placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your life is precious, Arav," he said softly. "Don't waste it on people who don't value it. The wise man knows when to hold on, and when to walk away." Arav nodded, feeling his chest grow lighter, as if removing invisible weights he had been carrying for years. He didn't know exactly how he would change his circle, but he knew he would. Something inside him had shifted permanently. That evening, as the sky turned orange and the birds returned to their nests, Arav looked at the world with new eyes. He could feel his old life fading, not painfully but naturally, like a season that had served its purpose. Tomorrow he would be ready for the third warning. A warning that would challenge him even deeper, and reveal another truth about the silent behaviors that destroy a man from within. That night, Arav lay awake longer than usual. The second warning kept circling inside his mind like a quiet storm. He replayed memories of people he had once trusted, people he had held on to even when they had pulled him downward. It wasn't anger he felt now, it was clarity. A kind of gentle awakening that comes when a man finally understands what has been silently draining him for years. The night outside was calm, but inside him, something was shifting. By morning, Arav felt lighter. Not because everything had changed, but because he had changed. And sometimes that is enough to start a new life. He stepped into the courtyard where his grandfather was waiting, seated in the same peaceful posture as always, as if the universe itself whispered wisdom into his ears every dawn. Arav sat beside him, and the old man nodded, recognizing the new stillness in his eyes. "You're beginning to see," his grandfather said gently. "You're beginning to wake up from the life you lived on repeat." Arav didn't respond, but the old man could sense he was ready. "Then today," he said slowly, "you will learn the third warning. Another behavior foolish people keep repeating, unaware of how deeply it destroys them. Arav took a slow breath, preparing himself. The old man looked straight ahead, as though he could see the memory of his own past mistakes reflected in the morning light. "Stupid people," he began, "keep running away from problems instead of confronting them." Arav felt a quiet sting of recognition. "Every human being has fears," his grandfather continued. "Every person has pain. Every life has challenges. But foolish people believe avoidance will protect them. They push their problems aside hoping they will disappear. They distract themselves. They pretend. They numb their feelings. They wait for time to solve what courage is meant to solve." Arav looked down slowly, realizing how often he had done this. How many times he had postponed difficult conversations, avoided responsibilities, delayed decisions, escaped challenges, and chosen comfort over effort, all because facing the truth felt heavier in the moment. His grandfather sensed the connection forming. "Avoidance feels safe in the moment," he said, "but it always destroys you later. Problems don't disappear when ignored, they grow. And by the time you finally face them, they are bigger, sharper, and far more painful." The old man's voice softened. "Do you remember when your bills started piling up last year? You kept telling yourself you'd handle them later. But later turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The amount didn't scare you, your own avoidance did." Arav nodded slowly. He had felt that fear eating him from the inside. Not the fear of the problem, but the fear of finally facing it. "Stoicism teaches that we suffer more in imagination than in reality," his grandfather said. "Avoidance is nothing but the imagination exaggerating fear. When you face a problem, it weakens. When you run from it, it grows stronger." Arav let the words settle. He thought of all the moments in his life when he had chosen silence instead of speaking the truth, delay instead of action, fear instead of clarity. The old man continued, "A wise man walks into discomfort. He faces challenges directly. He accepts reality as it is. He does not wait for life to clean his mess. He cleans it himself." Arav felt something in his chest shift again, not painfully but with a kind of relief. It was like finally admitting a truth he had always known but never spoken. "What should I do now?" Arav asked quietly. "Start small," his grandfather replied. "Pick one thing you've been avoiding for months. One thing that makes you uncomfortable. And act on it today, not tomorrow. When you do, you will understand the power that comes from confronting life head-on." Arav nodded, feeling a quiet strength form inside him. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady like the beginning of inner discipline. His grandfather looked at him with a warm seriousness. "Avoidance turns men into shadows. Confrontation turns them into warriors." The words struck deep. As the day unfolded, Arav found himself reflecting on all the unfinished tasks, the unanswered messages, the unresolved issues he had been running from. He realized avoidance didn't protect him, it trapped him. The moment he accepted this, his mind felt lighter, clearer, almost breathable. That evening, he walked to the small room where he kept his old documents, the ones he had avoided sorting for months. His hands trembled slightly, but he continued. He took a deep breath, opened the drawer, and faced what he had been avoiding. It wasn't the documents that scared him. It was the version of him that had avoided them. But tonight he took the first step. As the room filled with the quiet rustle of papers being rearranged, something else rearranged inside him. His relationship with fear. When he finally stepped outside, the night air felt different. Lighter. Softer. Free. Arav knew this was only the beginning. 6 warnings still remained. 6 habits that had silently shaped his life. Tomorrow, his grandfather would reveal the 4th one, a habit so common, so subtle, and yet so destructive that most people never even realize they're doing it. The next morning arrived quietly, but inside Arav, something had begun to sharpen. He wasn't fully transformed yet, not even close, but there was a new firmness in him, a new willingness to face himself without running away. The small task he had confronted the previous night still echoed in his mind. It wasn't the papers that mattered, it was the feeling of stepping toward discomfort instead of backing away from it. For the first time in years, Arav felt a hint of self-respect returning. His grandfather noticed it immediately. As Arav walked into the courtyard, the old man's eyes softened with approval. He didn't say anything at first. He simply waited, allowing the silence to settle, allowing Arav to understand that growth isn't loud, it's quiet, steady, almost invisible when it begins. After a moment, the old man said, "Sit. Today's lesson will be difficult, because this habit hides inside almost everyone. Even the intelligent fall into it, but the foolish remain trapped forever." Arav sat beside him, his curiosity rising. "I'm ready," he said quietly. His grandfather looked toward the distant hills as if reading wisdom from the morning sky. "The fourth warning," he said, "is that stupid people keep repeating their promises, but never keep them." Arav blinked slowly, taking in the words. The old man continued, "A foolish person is full of intentions, full of plans, full of dreams, but empty in action. They swear they'll change. They swear they'll improve. They swear they'll stop their bad habits, start their good ones, fix their mistakes. But their life remains exactly the same." Arav felt his shoulders tighten. He couldn't deny the accuracy of this truth. How many times had he made promises to himself? How many times had he said, "Tomorrow I'll start," or "From next week I'll change," or "I swear this time I'm serious"? Yet nothing changed. "Words are cheap," his grandfather said. "Action is sacred. The foolish rely on motivation. The wise rely on discipline." He let the sentence hang in the air, its weight settling between them like an ancient law. Arav's mind drifted through his past. Nights when he had sworn he'd fix his schedule, mornings when he had promised he'd work harder, moments when he had declared he would stop wasting time. Each promise floated into his memory like a ghost of someone he used to be. His grandfather continued, "A foolish man lies to the world once, but he lies to himself 1,000 times. And every broken promise weakens him. Every time he says he will change and doesn't, he loses respect for himself. He begins to doubt his own word. And nothing destroys a man faster than losing trust in his own voice." Arav swallowed. That feeling was painfully familiar. Stoic philosophy teaches, the old man said, that you must speak only when your words serve action. Anything you promise must come from discipline, not emotion. Arav nodded slowly. "But why do we do it?" he asked. "Why do we keep making promises we don't keep?" His grandfather looked at him with gentle eyes. "Because the promise gives us a temporary feeling of progress. It tricks the mind into thinking change has already begun. It feels good to say, 'I'll start tomorrow.' For a moment, the brain feels relieved. But it's an illusion, the comfort before the collapse." Arav felt something inside him shift uncomfortably. He had lived in those illusions too long. The old man leaned slightly forward. "There is a rule you must remember for the rest of your life. Never repeat a promise. Either you keep it, or you stop saying it." Arav breathed out slowly, absorbing each word deeply. "From today," his grandfather continued, "before you promise anything, stop. Think. Ask yourself, will I actually do it? If yes, speak only once. If no, stay silent. And if you don't trust yourself yet, make the promise smaller but make it real." Arav felt something heavy lift inside him. A strange mix of fear and clarity washed over him. He realized he had wasted years living on promises instead of progress. Years of convincing himself change had started, when it never had. "I want to change this," Arav said firmly. "That is not enough," his grandfather replied softly. "Wanting is nothing. Doing is everything. Today choose one small promise. Just one. Something so simple that you cannot escape it. And once you decide, follow through completely." Arav thought for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I will. I'll choose something I can't run from." His grandfather smiled. "Good. A man who keeps his own word becomes strong. His mind trusts him. His spirit obeys him. That is where discipline is born." That evening, as the day softened into dusk, Arav sat alone in his room, thinking of his first promise. It didn't have to be dramatic. It didn't have to impress anyone. It just had to be real. He whispered to himself, "This time, no more empty words." As the light faded and the night began, Arav felt a new seriousness settle inside him. A quiet vow to himself that would mark the beginning of a different life. Tomorrow, his grandfather would reveal the fifth warning. A warning about a habit so subtle. It destroys a man while he believes he's doing nothing wrong at all. The night has a strange way of revealing truths that daylight keeps hidden. When the world goes quiet, the mind gets louder. And for Adrian, night had become a battlefield he could no longer escape. Each thought sharpened like a blade. Each memory throbbed like an open wound. But sometimes darkness doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to show you the parts of yourself you can't keep running from. Stoic philosophy teaches that no man becomes strong without first confronting the storms inside him. And this was the night Adrian finally understood that avoiding the truth had cost him more than the truth itself ever could. He sat on the rooftop of his building, the city glowing beneath him. Cold air brushed against his skin. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about Maya or the betrayal or the anger. Instead, he was thinking about himself, the one person he had ignored for far too long. He replayed Cashin's words in his mind, "Pain isn't your enemy. Running from it is. He had always run, from responsibility, from reflection, from the weight of who he had become. But tonight there was nowhere left to run. Adrian leaned back and looked at the sky. "Why am I like this?" he whispered to himself. "Why do I keep doing the same stupid things that destroy me?" Silence responded. The kind of silence that forces a man to answer his own questions. He remembered the job he lost last year because he kept procrastinating. He remembered the friendships he ruined because he reacted before thinking. He remembered how he stayed angry for days over things that didn't matter. And worst of all, he remembered how he blinded himself with pride, believing he was right even when he destroyed something good. He had created this version of himself, and only he could change it. Downstairs, Cashin sat in the dimly lit training room waiting. He knew Adrian would come. He knew this night would break him in the right direction. When Adrian finally walked down, the exhaustion in his eyes told Cashin everything. This was the moment of transformation. "You look like you met the truth," Cashin said calmly. Adrian sat opposite him. Maybe for the first time. Cashin poured 2 cups of water and slid one toward him. "Good. Because truth is step 1. Step 2 is what you do with it." Adrian took a deep breath. "Why do people keep repeating the same mistakes? Why did I?" Cashin leaned back. "Because stupidity isn't about intelligence. It's about habits. It's about choosing comfort over growth. It's about refusing to discipline your mind. Most people don't ruin their lives in one big decision. They ruin them in the small daily choices they don't pay attention to." Adrian stared at the floor, absorbing every word. Cashin continued. "You want to know the real danger? A person can become so used to their stupid patterns that they start calling them personality. And once you call it personality, you stop trying to change." That hit Adrian hard. For years he believed he was just emotional, just impulsive, just unlucky. But now he saw the truth. Those weren't traits. Those were choices he never corrected. Cashin stood and motioned him to follow. They entered a room Adrian hadn't seen before. The walls were lined with ancient quotes, Stoic verses, and handwritten notes Cashin had collected over decades. It felt like stepping into the mind of a warrior monk. Cashin pointed to a line written in bold letters. "You suffer because you avoid the discipline that would free you." Adrian read it twice, then a third time. It felt like a mirror reflecting all the years he wasted. "This," Cashin said softly, "is your enemy, not Maya, not the betrayal, not your past. This." He tapped the quote again. "Your lack of discipline." Adrian clenched his jaw, frustration rising. "I wasted so much time." Cashin shook his head. "No, you learned. And learning late is better than never learning at all. But now you must rebuild yourself one disciplined action at a time." "How?" Adrian asked. Cashin handed him a worn-out notebook. "We start by identifying the 7 behaviors you keep repeating, the ones that have been sabotaging your life. When a man becomes aware of his repeated foolishness, he can finally break the cycle. But awareness comes first." Adrian opened the notebook and saw blank pages. "This is empty," he said. Cashin nodded. "Exactly. Because your transformation begins tonight. You will write your truths, not mine. Your errors, not theories. Your demons, not someone else's philosophy." Adrian hesitated. He felt exposed, raw, almost ashamed. Cashin clasped a hand on his shoulder. "Courage isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to face yourself without excuses." Those words lit something inside Adrian, a small but undeniable spark. He sat at the desk, pen trembling in his hand, and began writing the mistakes he kept repeating. Avoiding responsibility, reacting without thinking, blaming others, holding grudges, procrastinating, staying in toxic situations, and ignoring his intuition. Each word felt like carving out a part of himself he no longer wanted to carry. When he finished, Cashin took the notebook, skimmed the list, and nodded approvingly. "This," he said, "is the real beginning." Adrian finally felt it, the shift, the clarity, the quiet awakening inside a storm. And he didn't know it yet, but the next session would change everything. The next morning arrived without warning. Adrian hadn't slept, not even for a minute. His mind kept replaying the list he wrote last night. 7 behaviors, 7 chains, 7 quiet poisons he had willingly lived with for years. The weight of that notebook felt heavier than anything Cashin had ever made him lift. Because physical weight strengthens the body, but the weight of truth strengthens the soul. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the streets were still wrapped in a sleepy haze. Adrian walked into the training hall, expecting Cashin to be waiting with a lecture. But instead he found him sitting silently, eyes closed, meditating. The room was still, as if time itself was holding its breath. Without opening his eyes, Cashin spoke. "Sit. Your mind is too loud." Adrian sat across from him, trying to imitate the same stillness, but his thoughts kept racing. The mistakes he wrote down felt like they were etched into his bones. He felt ashamed, but also strangely relieved. For the first time in years, he wasn't pretending to be fine. Cashin finally opened his eyes. "Do you know why most people never change?" Adrian shook his head. "Because they want transformation without confrontation. They want new results with the same old habits. They want to grow without letting their ego die. But you cannot defeat the enemy you refuse to look at directly." Cashin stood up and motioned for Adrian to follow. They walked into a narrow room Adrian had never entered before. The entire wall on one side was covered with a massive mirror, tall, cold, unforgiving. "Stand there," Cashin ordered. Adrian stepped in front of the mirror. He expected Cashin to lecture him about posture or discipline. Instead, Cashin tapped the notebook Adrian filled last night and said, "Read it out loud, while looking at yourself." Adrian's stomach tightened. "Out loud?" "Yes," Cashin replied, "until your voice stops shaking." Adrian swallowed, lifted the notebook, and stared at his reflection. Under the dim light, he could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the long nights, the fear, the guilt. He cleared his throat. "I avoid responsibility." His voice cracked. Cashin said nothing. "I react without thinking." His reflection looked back at him like a stranger. "I blame others instead of correcting myself." He felt a knot in his chest tightening. "I hold grudges that poison me more than the people I hate." A memory of Maya sliced through him, sharper than he expected. "I procrastinate and then complain about my own failures." His jaw tightened. "I stay in toxic situations even when they drain me." His breathing grew heavy. "I ignore my intuition even when it screams." Silence filled the room. Cashin stepped beside him, his voice low and steady. "How did it feel?" Adrian looked at the floor. "Like I just punched myself." Cashin nodded. "Exactly. Because honesty hurts, but dishonesty kills." He handed the notebook back. "Every stupid mistake a man keeps repeating isn't random. It's connected to a deeper wound inside him. Today we find your wound." Cashin led him outside into the courtyard, where the morning breeze was just beginning to warm. He placed a wooden staff on the ground. "Pick it up," he said. Adrian obeyed. "Now swing." Adrian swung without thinking. Sloppy, rushed, unfocused. Cashin shook his head. Again. Adrian swung again, still messy. Cashin stepped forward, grabbed the staff and said, "Your body moves like your mind, chaotic, impatient, desperate to finish instead of learning how to begin." Adrian felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. Cashin continued, "Your biggest wound isn't anger. It isn't betrayal. It's impatience. You rushed through life wanting results without building the foundation." Adrian froze, because it was true. He rushed conversations. He rushed decisions. He rushed healing. He rushed everything, hoping speed would hide his inner chaos. Cashin handed the staff back. "This impatience created the 7 stupid behaviors you wrote last night. And until you conquer it, the cycle will repeat." Adrian felt something inside him shift, a recognition, a painful clarity. Cashin then walked to a bench and sat down. "Tell me about Maya," he said casually. Adrian stiffened. "What?" "I'm trying to move on." "Exactly," Cashin replied. "Which is why she still controls your mind." Adrian took a slow breath. "She was everything to me. I thought she understood me. But I pushed her away. I kept repeating the same mistakes. Jealousy, assumptions, ignoring her needs, reacting without thinking." Cashin raised a hand. "Stop." Adrian fell silent. "You speak of her as if she is gone," Cashin said. "But she's not gone. She's living inside the part of you that refuses to heal. A memory is only painful when it exposes a truth you're avoiding." Adrian felt his throat tighten. "What truth?" "That she didn't break you," Cashin said softly. "You broke yourself long before she did anything." The words hit him like thunder. His knees felt weak. Cashin continued, "You loved her with emotion, not with wisdom. You tried to own what you should have appreciated. You tried to control what you should have communicated. That is why you lost her." Adrian felt tears sting the backs of his eyes, but he held them back. Cashin lifted his chin. "Pain isn't here to punish you. Pain is here to teach you. You must stop fighting it and start listening to it." Adrian looked away, overwhelmed. "So what do I do now?" Cashin smiled faintly. "Now we rebuild. Not from anger. Not from regret. But from awareness." He stood, pointing toward the training hall. Go inside and write the truth you've been avoiding the most. Adrian hesitated. And what truth is that? Cashin looked him dead in the eye. The truth that scares you is the truth that will free you. Adrian felt his heart pound. He knew exactly what Cashin meant. And as he walked back toward the hall, the weight of that unspoken truth followed him like a shadow. Session 7 would force Adrian to confront the one thing he had buried deeper than anything else. Adrian entered the training hall with steps that felt heavier than usual. The silence inside wasn't normal silence. It carried weight, as if the walls themselves knew he was about to unearth something he had been running from for years. The notebook lay on the table where he left it, waiting like an unfinished confession. He sat down slowly, opened it, and stared at the blank page. Cashin's words echoed in his mind. The truth that scares you is the truth that will free you. His fingers trembled slightly as he held the pen. For the first time since he met Cashin, he hesitated not because he didn't know what to write, but because he already did, and it terrified him. He finally wrote one sentence. I am afraid of becoming my past. The moment the words touched the paper, something inside him cracked open. Because this, more than anger, more than hurt, more than regret, this was the truth he had buried the deepest. Not Maya. Not betrayal. Not heartbreak. It was fear. It was the fear of turning into the version of himself he once swore he'd never be. Cashin appeared behind him quietly. You found it. Adrian didn't turn around. I don't know if I'm ready to face it. Cashin walked forward and sat opposite him. Read it. Adrian lifted the notebook and whispered, I'm afraid of becoming my past. Cashin nodded. Good. Now say the second truth. Adrian frowned. What second truth? The one you're avoiding right now. Adrian swallowed hard. After a long pause he wrote again, slowly. I hurt people before they can hurt me. His chest tightened as soon as he said it out loud. He finally looked up at Cashin, expecting judgment, but Cashin's face was calm, almost proud. Now we can begin, Cashin said. Adrian leaned back, feeling a strange mix of vulnerability and relief. Why does this feel harder than anything you've made me do physically? Because physical pain is temporary, Cashin replied. But emotional honesty cuts through years of lies you've told yourself. Adrian looked at the words again, the ink still drying. I don't want to be like this anymore. Cashin pointed at the page. Then this truth is your doorway. He stood and motioned for Adrian to follow. They stepped outside into a quiet corner of the courtyard, where a single wooden chair sat beneath an old tree. Cashin gestured toward it. Sit. Adrian sat down, confused. Cashin placed another chair across from him, but instead of sitting, he placed a mirror on it. The same mirror Adrian had faced earlier, but now it was eye level, unavoidable. Look at him, Cashin ordered. Adrian stared at his reflection. He looked older than he remembered, not by age but by exhaustion, by battles fought alone, by guilt carried in silence. Cashin circled him slowly. Tell him the truth. Adrian clenched his fists. What truth? Cashin stopped behind him. Tell him you forgive him. Adrian's heartbeat stumbled. Forgive myself? For what? For being human, Cashin said calmly. For not knowing better. For reacting from fear. For loving recklessly. For growing slower than you wanted. For falling. For failing. For breaking your own heart. For surviving in the only ways you knew how. Adrian looked at the reflection, the scar beneath his left eye, the tired stare, the uncertainty. He had spent years criticizing himself, punishing himself, denying himself any softness. Forgiveness felt foreign. I don't know how, Adrian whispered. Cashin placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then today you will learn. Because a man who cannot forgive himself becomes a prisoner of his own guilt. Adrian's eyes burned, but he didn't look away from the mirror. Cashin continued, all the stupid behaviors you wrote, the impulsiveness, the anger, the fear, the self-sabotage, they didn't come from stupidity. They came from a wound. A wound you never cleaned. A wound you kept hiding under distractions. Adrian felt something tighten in his throat, a pressure he hadn't let himself release in years. Cashin spoke again, voice steady and deep. You think your past defines you because you keep carrying it instead of learning from it? But your past isn't a life sentence, it's a lesson. And right now, you're still acting like the same wounded boy who never received guidance. Adrian's breath trembled. Then who am I supposed to become? Cashin stepped in front of him. A man who chooses truth over emotion, discipline over impulse, awareness over pride, and forgiveness over fear. Adrian nodded slowly, trying to absorb every word. Cashin then said, Close your eyes. Adrian closed them. Now say it. Adrian hesitated. Say what? Say, I forgive you. Say it to yourself. A lump formed in Adrian's throat. Cashin, I don't know if I can. You can, Cashin whispered. Because strength isn't hardness. Strength is honesty. Adrian took a shaky breath and finally said, barely above a whisper, I forgive you. The moment the words left his mouth, something in him collapsed. Not a weakness, but a release. A quiet surrender. A loosening of a chain he didn't even realize he was carrying. Cashin stepped back. Good. Now open your eyes. Adrian opened them, and for the first time he didn't just see his reflection. He saw a beginning. Cashin nodded with quiet approval. The man who forgives himself becomes unstoppable, because nothing inside him remains to sabotage him. Adrian wiped the corner of his eye quickly. What happens now? Cashin smiled. Now, session 8. The session where you must confront the final behavior that has been destroying your life without you even realizing it. And with that, the storm inside Adrian began to finally settle, preparing him for the transformation he never thought possible. The ruins were silent, yet they carried a kind of ancient tenderness, as if even broken stones wanted to whisper something to him. He walked deeper into the old hall, the lantern's warm glow brushing across cracked walls and pillars that once held the pride of powerful men long gone. In this silence, there was no audience, no noise, no people to distract him. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't running from anything. He was simply standing in the truth of his own mind. The old foundation he had been rebuilding, his inner foundation, felt stronger now. Not perfect, not complete, but alive. And as he sat on a fallen block of stone, he sensed something he hadn't felt in years, clarity without fear. He remembered one of the most bitter lessons he had learned over the past days, something that had shaken him more deeply than all the others. Stupid people repeat their mistakes because they run from responsibility. Wise people rise because they confront it. He had spent years running, hiding, pretending things weren't his fault, blaming luck, destiny, people, circumstances, everything except himself. That version of him was dead now. The ruins around him felt symbolic, but this time the destruction wasn't his own. This time he was looking at the remains of someone else's world and realizing he didn't want his life to end like this. He touched the carved patterns left on the stone floor. Even after centuries, they hadn't completely faded. People carve their ignorance too, he whispered to himself, and most never erase it. But he wasn't that man anymore. The storm outside had calmed. A soft breeze slipped through the broken entrance, carrying the smell of dust, age, and something strangely peaceful. He looked toward the exit, toward the world waiting for him, and he knew something had changed inside that couldn't be undone. He had learned 7 brutal truths. People destroy themselves through the habits they refuse to let go. People stay miserable because they cling to excuses like a blanket. People repeat stupidity because comfort feels safer than growth. People hide behind ego instead of humbling themselves to learn. People waste time hoping life will magically change. People fill silence with noise because they fear meeting their true thoughts. And people fear discipline because it reveals who they really are. He had lived all 7. He had suffered all 7. And he had paid the price for all 7. But suffering becomes a gift the moment you stop wasting it. He stood up, brushing the dust from his hands. The lantern flickered slightly as if responding to his movement. He felt the weight of everything he had learned settling into him, not as inspiration but as responsibility. True change doesn't come from dramatic moments. It comes from who you decide to be once the moment is over. As he walked toward the exit, the sky outside had opened into a soft golden hue, sunlight cutting through clouds that had threatened him all day. Nature had a strange way of mirroring the mind. Storms come, storms pass. Only the person who remains afterward decides whether to grow from them or repeat them. When he stepped outside, a cold breeze ran across his face. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed deeply, letting the air fill his lungs like a reminder. You're alive and you still have work to do. He opened his journal one last time and wrote slowly, deliberately, letting each word come from a place of clarity he had never known before. Stupidity is not about lack of intelligence. It's about refusing to change when life is begging you to evolve. He paused, then continued, I will not repeat who I was. I will not return to what destroyed me. I will not let comfort rob me of the man I must become. He closed the journal with a quiet firmness. This wasn't just the ending of a chapter in his life, it was the burial of the old self he had dragged for too many years. He took one final look at the ruins, not with sorrow but with gratitude. Thank you, he whispered. for reminding me what I must never allow myself to become." Then he walked away, not faster, not slower, just steady. A man who finally understood that the greatest stupidity in life is thinking you have time to waste. And he wasn't going to waste another second.